The first dinosaur fossils were discovered, at least by anyone who cared, back in the early 1800s. The interest of modern man has been piqued to learn more about these remarkable prehistoric creatures. This unheralded and somewhat obscure discovery ignited our curiosity about life 230 to 65 million years ago, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. In the 21st century, museums around the world compete to discover and display the finest in artifacts, reconstructions, and models of dinosaurs and their environment. Spectacular, life-sized exhibits that are truly breathtaking in their scope and detail. These exhibits, scholarly articles, books, and knowledge are the work product of professional dinosaur detectives, schooled in the various scientific disciplines of paleontology, biology, paleobiology, geology, and many others. Intrepid adventurers, investigators of the past, devote entire careers searching, digging, collecting, preserving, examining, and analyzing fossils. As one paleontologist put it, from the smallest details, we attempt to create the big picture of what went on millions of years ago. In a recent discovery in Argentina, even a dinosaur's skin texture has been discovered from fossilized skin found inside a dinosaur egg. Remarkable, fascinating work, becoming even more so with improving tools and techniques of the 21st century scientist. It's a consuming passion to assemble an accurate picture of what life and death was all about millions of years ago. The imagination of the public has been captured by these modern-day dinosaur detectives. The more they discover, the more interested is the world community in learning about these remarkable creatures. Museums worldwide receive thousands of visitors each year, curious to learn more about dinosaurs. Young and old alike seem to enjoy the magic of prehistoric history. This is an exhibit at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. Created in association with the Carmen Funes Museum in Plaza Huincul, Argentina, illustrating an extremely important and fascinating find not far from Plaza Huincul, a huge area of dinosaur egg nests. We'll get back to it in a moment as the story of dinosaurs unfolds. Beginning over 200 million years ago, dinosaurs roamed the Earth for a period estimated at about 150 million years, dominating life on the planet until their mysterious extinction 65 million years ago. The Earth was a much different place then, with continents as we know them today just beginning to fragment from a much larger landmass. Africa was closer to South America than was North America. There was no land bridge between North and South America. An Earth in transition. Now in the 21st century, 4 areas of the world seem to hold the most clues to solving the riddles of Earth's ancient past. Mongolia, China, the Great Plains of the United States, and the Patagonia region of Argentina, the area in which this program is focused. The badlands of Patagonia and Chacon province stretch hundreds of miles across an arid, rugged countryside. With the exception of a few herdsmen attempting to eke out a living grazing sheep and cows, the only life you're likely to encounter in the badlands are a few hardy insects crawling across the sandy desert floor, looking for who knows what, or a prehistoric-looking tortoise who looks as if it actually belongs here. True until a few years ago, that is. Now the treasures of Argentina's badlands, each prehistoric in creation, are being explored, discovered, and perhaps in some cases exploited. Across the semi-arid landscape of Argentina's Chacon province, mantis-like oil pumps bob up and down, delivering from some secret strata below precious liquid energy in demand worldwide. Vast reserves of oil and gas, with the requisite hordes of drillers and support crews, have created a boomtown atmosphere in what had been small, quiet little villages. Oil has brought notoriety and a measured amount of prosperity to the region. The geology of oil country attracts another breed of explorers and adventurers in search of a commodity almost as old, perhaps more romantic, and definitely not as sought after on the open market. Answers to the riddles of the Earth's ancient past, millions of years ago, a time when dinosaurs roamed and ruled the land. In Argentina's badlands, within a 250-mile oval, are at least 5 significant, separate, and extremely important paleontological digs in various stages of discovery and study. In the heart of this desolate patch of real estate, near a place called Acamawida, a team of scientists led by Dr. Luis Chiappi from the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County and his associate, Dr. Rodolfo Coria, from the Museum of Carmen Funes in nearby Plaza Huincul, are investigating, discovering, and interpreting an extremely important chapter in the mystery of life and death 80 million years ago. Dr. Chiappi begins the story.
The project started in 1996. I went to this site, Acamawida, simply because I knew, based on geologic maps, that the area had to be very promising. There were many, obviously in paper, lots of outcrops, and I knew that was an area that had been very, very, very little explored, if any. So at that time, I was searching for remains of ancient birds, or the Mesozoic birds, or the ancestors of birds, those meat-eating dinosaurs that most of us believe are related to birds. I took only a week in 1996, and with a small crew and a single car, and went there. We found some little things. We didn't find any bird remains, but obviously the place was magnificent and called for a larger expedition. In 1997, I put together a much bigger expedition that instead of spending a week, the plan was to spend 4 weeks in the area with many more vehicles, with 20 people instead of 5, and so on. We were very lucky. The second day of our work there, we hit this place. We found this magnificent site right where you've been, those flats with plentiful of eggshells, and eggshells really littering the ground.
Dr. Coria graciously conducted a tour of the site. Dr. Coria is a well-known Argentine paleontologist who is curator of the Carmen Funes Museum in nearby Plaza Huincul. The work for which he is most noted, in addition to that he's doing on the egg fields, is his discovery of a new species of carnivore on the Acamawida site. He's also led the team which excavated the largest carnivore ever, the Giganotosaurus carolini, an event we'll cover in more detail in a later chapter of this story of dinosaurs. This is the site which they found when they returned on their second trip for a more extensive investigation of the area.
This is how the eggs are exposed in this area of the locality. You can see a bunch of eggshells in the surface of the ground because the eggs has been weathered by the erosion. In this area, if you look around, all those grayish spots on the reddish clay are egg clusters. And when we first came here, we couldn't know that if these clusters were or not representing real nest. And because there are not structures in the sediments that allow us to identify the unit of a nest. So that's why we call that, at that time, clusters, just clusters.
So you could tell from those other nests that these were also nests?
Yes. Now we know that these are nests.
So all this material that looks almost like gravel?
Yep. All these fragments are eggshells. You can see that they have an outside surface, which is very bumpy and ornamented, and the inner side of the eggshell, even if it has a sort of ornamentation, is completely different from the outside. And also you can use the principle of convexity of concavity in terms of identify which is out and which is in a single eggshell. In sometimes you still can see the round profile of the egg, like in this case. If you make a digging work of this cluster and you flip it over, you still can see the under part of the eggs in a very well preservation state. But in another areas, we still can find the eggs still in the ground without action of the weathering. So the eggs are in much better shape, and also in those cases sometimes we can find some embryos inside.
We did not know which dinosaurs had laid those eggs, and we were lucky we found the embryos. The embryos led to the identification of the eggs as those of sauropod dinosaurs. Then we found more embryos, better preserved, and that led to the identification of the eggs not only as sauropod dinosaurs, but within sauropod dinosaurs as those of a subgroup of sauropods called titanosaurs, forms that were quite common in the late Cretaceous of South America, the typical dinosaurs that you must have seen if you went to Rincon, or Argentinosaurus, for example, was titanosaur, and many other sauropods that we have from that time in Argentina are titanosaurs. We did not know whether the sauropods had laid the eggs in a certain pattern. In order to do that, we conducted a series of excavations, systematic excavations, and we mapped the eggs in 3 dimensions. We didn't map them only saying those that were on the surface, but we also, through our excavation, we map the depth of each egg, and we were able then later to reconstruct the entire, the quarry, at least the portion of this enormous nesting ground that we had mapped in 3 dimensions.
We drew in the ground of this flat area a grid of 300 meters by 200 meters, and we counted all the clutches surrounded by this grid, and our number rise up to 73 clutches just in this area. And also in another spot of this locality where we make an excavation work, and we were able to count complete eggs in the ground, we make another grid, smaller in size, of 5 meters by 3 meters. In this 18 square meter surface, we counted 300 eggs. The amounts of egg material like this in these localities is completely amazing, and it's definitely the biggest nesting area of dinosaur eggs found in the whole world. And we are proving this not because of calculation or speculation as being done in another areas of the world. We are counting, we are doing absolute numbers of the density of fossil eggs.
It's become a very interdisciplinary research because we wanted to find out many things, and therefore we brought a number of specialists into the team. We brought people who were capable of, for example, fine-tuning the dating of the eggs, and we conducted studies of paleomagnetism, In other words, we took samples of rocks across our stratigraphic section and discovered that, for example, the eggs had been laid when the polarity of the Earth was reversed. In other words, when if you had a compass 80 million years ago, the compass would have been pointed south instead of north. And through the studies of the soils where the eggs were laid, we learned that the environment was a semi-arid environment with seasonal regime, with seasons with heavy rains and dry seasons. We were lucky to find clutches that were laid in their own nests. In other words, in structures that had been created by the dinosaurs, something that we did not know.
Working in this area, we have learned a lot of the reproductive behavior of these dinosaurs. First of all, these are the first definitive sauropod eggs identified in the world, because we don't only found the eggs, we also found the embryos inside the eggs. So the only way to identify what kind of dinosaur laid, what kind of animal laid a egg, is finding the embryo inside, so you can make a systematic and anatomical identification. Fortunately for us, these embryos were mature enough to show some anatomical features in the bones that allowed us to identify that these eggs were laid by sauropods, this kind of dinosaur, very big, heavy, quadrupedal, with long tails and necks. This area is preserving 4 layers of fossil eggs of the same kind. All the eggs are showing the same microstructure in the eggshells, so we can say that all the eggs in all the layers were laid by the same kind of dinosaur. What does mean that finding 4 successive in time egg layers or geological layers bearing eggs? It means that these animals came to this area with some frequency, time to time, and in all this, we don't know how many times these sauropods came to this area to lay their eggs, but we know that at least they came for 4 times, because those are the times which were preserved like fossils. Having a sequence of layers of the same kind of eggs is what we call in biology site fidelity. Is that this kind of animals developed a kind of sophisticated behavior that they select, for some reason, they choose this area to reproduce and to lay their eggs. Another thing that we learned is that the sauropods laid eggs, because before finding these embryos inside, because most of the so-called sauropod eggs in the world, well, let's say from India, from Africa, from Europe, and even from North America and from South America, they didn't have embryos inside. So some people, they have some doubts about these eggs were laid by sauropods, and some hypotheses about viviparism in sauropods came out. Maybe some people were saying, well, the sauropods were so big that they didn't need to lay eggs. They get burned living hatch like several reptiles today. Well, we are proving with this finding that the sauropods laid eggs as any other dinosaur. We found some patches of embryonic skin. The embryonic skin was very similar to the adult skin of sauropods that has been collected in some parts of South America and also from North America and Europe. The skin was formed by scutes, like scales, but not in the way of the typical reptilian scales. So these scales in the typical reptile, the scales overlap each other, but in this skin, in the skin that we found of these sauropods, these scales are like bricks in the ground. They are just touching laterally each other, side to side, do not overlap in each other, and which is showing a similar morphology as the another dinosaur skins collected or recorded from hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs, or from sauropods themselves. The eggs are about, I was saying, between 12 and 15 centimeters in diameter, so are slightly larger like an ostrich egg. And from the size of the cranial bones of the embryos that we found in some eggs, we can say that at least those embryos, if they were close to hatch, at the hatching time, they were about 30 centimeters long, about a foot, which is very interesting because if these dinosaurs are titanosaurs, those titanosaurs that we know from adult skeletons, those skeletons are representing individuals of about 15 meters long, about 45 feet long. So it's a very interesting question. If you don't ask me, I will ask you how these so tiny juveniles of 30 centimeters long grew up to a monster of 15 meters long. Some histological studies done in the embryological bones are showing that these animals, in the very early stage of ontogenic development, they have a very fast growing, which makes sense in terms of surviving strategies. That's why there were so many, and also that's why maybe they grew up so fast, because they have to reach the adult size as soon as possible, because also in this area we have found some carnivores, representatives that were really very nasty for sure for these sauropods. And the only way to defend themselves from the carnivores were being big.
Size and perhaps some sort of herding behavior are what many scientists believe may have been the only protection the titanosaurs had from their meat-eating predatory relatives. The scientific importance of all this collective effort goes without saying. But there's a public manifestation of the scientists' research for everyone to appreciate and enjoy. The Tiniest Giants, an exhibit created by the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County in 2001, began a several-year tour schedule, with the first few months, of course, in Los Angeles. The stars of the show? The dinosaur eggs and their fossilized occupants. These model infant titanosaurs help everyone gain perspective to this recreation of the scene 80 million years ago. The exhibit features not only the tiniest giants, but also the people who have worked so diligently in the discoveries of Acamawida. Here, everyone can learn a great deal about the fieldwork that goes into paleontological research. One big hit of the exhibition on opening day, the Children's Discovery Area, where the young would-be paleontologists can make their own discoveries and even have them explained by one of the museum's very talented interpretive guides.
Do you know what the word fossilization means? No? What's a fossil?
To grasp size and gain a feeling for these huge creatures of the past, there's a life-size replica of the carnivore discovered at Acamawida and an aluminum sculpture of a titantosaur created to scale. As the story unfolded at Acamawida, Dr. Correa pointed out that their work to create a big picture of what happened 80 million years ago in this place is done so by examining the most minute details. Every detail, no matter how small, will help them achieve some sort of understanding of what went on back
Do you
then.
see this bone? Yeah. It's pretty nice. The texture and the outside thing is... Well, this is a tiny, very tiny piece of bone, a biological bone. The preservation is very good. It's not weathered in the outside, so it's a very good candidate for make a thin section in order to see some microstructure in the bone, because sometimes the embryological bones are not as well ossified, so you don't see very clear the microstructure of the bone. And this sample is pretty neat, and it's not big enough to say something in terms of anatomical features, but it's a nice piece for making a thin section and looking under microscope.
The sheer size of this discovery is staggering in scope and depth. Less than a half-mile distant from the original find in these mud and clay buttes are more eggs.
Here we have an egg which it's just being exposed, and it's coming from the same layer that the one that we have been working on the other side of the hill. So we can attack the same egg layer from both sides of the hill, and also they're showing the horizontal location of the strata. And also it's a way that you can also appreciate the how extensive it is in terms of surface, because I think that they're around 10 meters apart from the other side, and we still are finding eggs. The whole area that's showing the nesting ground was very extensive in terms of surface, where so far we have found egg remains throughout 17 kilometers long of distance, and at least 2 of the 4 layers are always exposed in this 17 kilometers. So that would be also represented the biggest nesting ground ever existing in the earth, including actual nesting grounds. There is no any living animal that covers such a big area in the current days.
It's impossible to tell where or how far their discoveries will take them. What they haven't found, but know instinctively and intellectually is there, is a significant repository holding fossils of the adult sauropods that laid these eggs. Small fragments have been found, but so far, the basin hasn't yielded discovery of a Titanosaur. The search continues. In the oil fields just outside Rincon Las Sausas, about 70 miles from Acamawida, another Argentine paleontologist, Jorge Calvo, is working on a dig of sauropod fossils. Rain prevented them from working their primary dig on this particular day, but they showed us a new discovery of what they believe may be a Titanosaur femur and fibula, just a half-mile from their camp. The bad weather, in one respect, is good, since the rain delay gave them time for more exploration of the area.
We have found sauropod bones. The sauropods are huge dinosaurs with a long neck and long tail, and they walk in 4 legs. The material that we have here is humerus, the bone of the hind limb, the front limb, and the other one is a femur. This area of Rincon de los Sauces is very good to find dinosaurs because the outcrops belong to the Cretaceous area. So when you walk here, you may find a lot of few pieces or small pieces of dinosaur bones. So it's easy to find new material. No?
So that's why you go walking when it rains and you can't work on.
Yes, the only way to find dinosaurs is walking and look on the ground.
On the one hand, there's some comfort in the knowledge there lies in these hills a treasure trove of important dinosaur fossils to find, excavate, retrieve, and examine. On the other, it could be a little disconcerting to know the work ahead may last several generations. In New Ken, at the University of Comoé Paleontology Lab, another of the many steps in unraveling the mysteries of prehistoric being. The time that's required in this science is staggering. Finding the fossils is only one element, the first step, if you will, of the long discovery process.
I am cleaning this bone. It's a dorsal of a sauropod, and I am taking out the rock and separating the rock from the bone. We have to be very careful doing this because sometimes you can broke the bones. So we use brushes and hammers to do that. But this vertebra will take at least 3 weeks.
Jorge described his work, and for that matter, that of his contemporaries, as an attempt to put one letter on a page of an entire book about dinosaurs, to make some contribution to the understanding of the dinosaurs' family tree. The harsh, semi-arid environment of northern Patagonia is so sparsely populated, it would be easy to imagine that no human has or ever would pass through this barren collection of sand, sagebrush, and rock. Over the years, though, herdsmen have probably wandered up and down nearly every canyon here, looking for a stray or lost flock. And that's exactly how went the discovery of what some believe or hope to be fossils of the largest dinosaur yet found. This site, La Buitrera, as it's called, is in Rio Negro province, on the southern end of the Dinosaur Oval, about 200 miles from the Rincon Las Sauces site and 150 or so from the egg fields of Acamawida. Rio Negro provincial paleontologist Rachel Rao and Florentino Amahino museum curator Carlos Munoz have been part of the team, working the site since its discovery in January of 2001. Access is very difficult through the steep-walled, narrow canyon, with most of the fossils found near the top of the 130-foot cliffs. Difficult work under the best of conditions, the terrain surrounding this discovery requires additional time, effort, and expense. The area is so hard to reach, a helicopter is being considered to transport the fossils to a road. But even that may not be the solution, since one of the pieces, the pelvis bone, measures 3 meters by 2.5 meters and is estimated to weigh nearly 6 tons when wrapped in its protective field jacket of plaster and wire. From the pieces the team has recovered so far, experts are estimating the size of the creature to have been 150 to 160 feet long and 45 feet tall. If their estimates hold true, this discovery, which they've named the Rio Negro Giant, could be even larger than these bones of the Argentinosaurus winculensis, discovered in the same region on display at the Carmen Funes Museum in Plaza Huincul.
El fémur, acá lo que se ve es la cabeza del fémur de un saurópodo.
What you see is a sauropodal femur head. It is very much alike to the Titanosauriformis and Diplodos deformis femur head. For the size of the femur head, we calculate that the femur could be 2 meters and 15 centimeters long. This is a very large dinosaur. It is calculated that he measured between 40 and 50 meters long. He is not a robust dinosaur. He was a dinosaur with a slim figure. Up to date, the Argentinosaurus has been the largest found in Plaza Huincul. This may be the largest dinosaur ever found. The studies we are going to do might confirm this assumption. Meanwhile, his size is a positive indication that it may be the case. The measure of his cervical vertebrae are 1 meter and 20 centimeters long, each one. It is calculated that the dinosaur neck was 20 meters long. The cervical vertebrae are narrow and measure 44 centimeters wide. Knowing this measure, it is reasonable to believe that his head was very small in comparison to the animal's total length. This is very difficult to see, isn't it? The cervical vertebrae were 14. Yes, it is very difficult to remove the materials as well as to transport it. It has been necessary to use lift and power materials as well. It has been necessary to use these cranes to carry some of the bundles to Chipoleti Museum, and still we have these that are heavier than the others. They weigh approximately 400 to 500 kilos, and to transport this material we need to use a helicopter because the area is very inaccessible. But the soil where the bones are is soft. It is made up of some kind of sandstone. The difficult part is the transportation of this material to an appropriate place where it can be cleaned. What are your feelings when you see all of this? Well, knowing that these creatures inhabit this planet, it makes me think more about the real meaning of the human race on this planet. Creatures like the dinosaur lived here on our planet for 160 million years, and they became extinct by natural disasters. On the other hand, we the humans are causing irreparable damage to our planet. So it induces me to take better care of this planet, as it is our home after all.
At this point in their study of dinosaurs, it's impossible to factually determine if these sauropods found in La Buitrera may have ranged as far north as Acamawida to deposit their eggs. This is Ruben Carolini, who for years spent his weekends away from his job as an auto mechanic, wandering the hills and arroyos of New Quen's Badlands, searching for fossils. In 1993, he was working the trail of some small bones he spotted lower in the wash and found one of the most significant discoveries made to that date in the region. In this small depression, paleontologist Rodolfo Coria was now working the Acamawida site, unearthed, with Ruben's help of course, the largest carnivore ever, with nearly 70% of the bones, including disarticulated skull bones, recovered. Coria named the dinosaur Giganotosaurus carolini, after the unassuming amateur dinosaur detective who made the first discovery. A scale model of the Giganotosaurus is on display in Coria's Carmen Funes Museum in Plaza Huincul. It's a breathtaking and awe-inspiring creature. The recovered fossilized bones of the Giganotosaurus, all 70% of them, are either on display in the Valley of the Dinosaurs Museum in El Chacon, or in the preparatory lab, being readied for display. The Valley of the Dinosaurs Museum is just a few kilometers from where Carolini first discovered his Giganotosaurus. Ruben Carolini, retired from auto repair, has become a fixture here following the celebrity of his discovery. He often finds himself posing for photos with visitors in front of the massive model head of the Giganotosaurus. The community is very proud of their local hero and his discovery. Reuben works closely with museum paleontologist Edith Simon on a variety of projects connected with the museum. More than just another pretty face, as Reuben put it, he's also part of the museum's field team, exploring and excavating new fossil sites. The entire village of El Chacon is behind their efforts and provides them the funds and support, including this antique but beautifully restored vintage Army four-wheel drive truck to carry on their work. It's early fall now in Patagonia, so work outside is closing down for the season. The El Chacon team is on the way to a site they've been working recently. The exposed fossils have been excavated and wrapped in what is called a field jacket, which is a covering of paper and wire-reinforced plaster. The fossils are very hard, but also brittle, so the field jacket will protect them from the rough ride to the lab. This particular site is one of sauropod fossils, which they believe and, of course, hope may be a new species of Dinosaurs.
These field jackets contain a material from a sauropod. It's a sauropod we found in February. We had a problem because the material was so big. We had to cover the fossils with a chicken wire, and then another layer of paper material to cover the fossils completely. We do this in order to protect the fossils for safe transport to the laboratory in these field jackets. We'll see how safe when we get to the lab.
This is the part of the field work that requires expertise more in engineering and trucking than anything else. These fossils, with the added weight of wire and paper and plastic, will weigh 1,000 to 2,000 pounds, so it's no small task getting them retrieved from the field. This work is all done during the summer months. When winter comes, Edith and her crew spend their days preparing the fossils for examination, identification, to confirm if they have discovered a new species or subspecies of sauropod. They also inventory and store the pieces with the hope of assembling enough to create a display in the shape of their dinosaur.
This is the museum storing room. It's in a precarious condition, but there is a short-term project for its modification. The material that we have at this moment is stored on these shelves. On this shelf, we have a very important material. This is a part of a Giganotosaurus carolini, its skull, and a most valuable and important part, his teeth. As it can be seen, the teeth have a covertly form with tips pointing toward the rear with a system of teeth on both edges. The longest teeth are 23 centimeters long. This fantastic material is unique in the world and has been studied respectively by paleontologists Drs. Salgado and Rodolfo Coria from Camagüey University and the Museum Carmen Funes. The material you have videotaped was found with the material you have already seen. We are planning to display this material at the museum exhibition room. We are deciding this week which could be the best way to make these materials accessible to the public in an aesthetic and secure manner, since both conditions have to be fulfilled. There is other very fragile material kept in boxes.
In the Valley of the Dinosaurs, along the shore of El Chacon's large reservoir, there's other evidence of the great beast's passage. Another piece of the puzzle, or note in the symphony, if you will, that helps paleontologists create the story of the dinosaurs. Huellas, or tracks, fossilized dinosaur tracks, both of herbivores and carnivores, can be found here. Remarkable footprints from 80 million years ago. These tracks have been fenced off and protected with a helpful identifier to show the tracks were left by herbivore sauropods. Along the lakeshore are many more tracks, some of them from carnivores. Paleontologist Edith Simon explains.
Esta es una pista que corresponde a huellas de saurópodos.
These traces are a Sauropodos prints. The Sauropodos scientific name is Sauropodignos giganteus. There are numerous dinosaur tracks in this area, as you can observe. This area was filled with dinosaur tracks, completely filled with tracks. The dinosaurs left these tracks on fresh muddy ground, a very soft soil. The print's edge indicates that the soil was in an almost liquid state at the moment the animal stepped here. We can see two different kinds of prints. These are footprints of approximately 1 meter in diameter, and these are handprints, 45 to 50 centimeters wide, with a kidney shape showing a rear split. This split is a result of the way the animal stepped on the ground. In this area, we can observe a very interesting thing: two superimposed prints. The animal placed his hand first, then stepped on them with his feet. This is the first track, and then this is the second, one and then the other. This evidence indicates to us that the animals were calmly moving around, not running. We can conclude this by measuring the width and length of the step related to the height of the animal's hip. This mathematical formula indicates that the animal was placidly walking in this area. This area is very interesting because it indicates that the dinosaurs were moving around very calmly and not running. Here are two prints left by a dinosaur. The first print has been stepped on by a second one and then the other. They are superimposed and present a remarkable edge, indicating that the animal stepped in fresh, muddy soil.
El barro estaba hablando en el momento en que el animal pasó por este lugar.
Our sense of space, distance, and reason concludes that it's likely, or certainly possible, all the dinosaurs who lived and died within this large oval in Patagonia could easily have traveled to Acamawida to lay their eggs. Though the discoveries in Argentina are exceptional, this vast semi-arid land of Patagonia has revealed just a few notes in what many hope and believe will eventually be an exceptional symphony of life 80 million years ago.